was 1991 that I met my first true entrepreneur. I just spent 7 days on the Trans-Siberian Express, traveling from Beijing to Moscow. And Moscow then wasn't like it is today. The Berlin Wall had just fallen, communism was still a thing, and the KGB and the ruthless Russian mafia ruled. We arrived in Moscow not knowing where to stay. Now you've got to remember that this is before smartphones, before the internet, and most certainly before Airbnb. We thought we'd just wing it. But fortunately, I met someone on the train who knew someone else that would be able to get us a bed for the night. So even in this environment, we decided to take the risk instead of spending $150 a night on a cramped room in a government hotel. Katja was a ballet dancer, and she dreamed of going to Switzerland to dance in a prestigious dance academy. But to do this, she needed hard currency. She needed US dollars. Russian rubles weren't going to do it. So she rented out her room or her floor in exchange for $5 a night to people like us. Now, what we didn't realise when we did the deal is that this was highly illegal and extremely dangerous because we were crossing into the realm of the mafia. We were trading on the black market. So our booking agent that we met in the Moscow train station decided to protect us. And to do this, he took us on this most circuitous route across Moscow for 2 hours. We went into tube stations, out of tube stations, through one exit, crossed the road, went back down, took the tube somewhere else, and then finally we arrived. Towering above us was a grey, concrete, communist-style apartment block. That was our home for the night. I still regard Katja as a true entrepreneur, even though she didn't really have a business and no plans of doing a startup. She thought and she behaved like an entrepreneur. She saw a problem in the marketplace, backpackers like us needing a cheap place to stay. She solved it creatively, and every night she dealt with ambiguity because she didn't know who was going to turn up. But she also displayed an enormous amount of courage. She did something that could risk her freedom and jeopardize her dream. Compare that with my own experience at university about 30 years ago. I had this dream of being my own boss. So I decided to sign up for a Stage 3 entrepreneurship course, and I thought this would be my path to freedom and riches. So on day one, the professor instructed us, come up with a business idea, write me a 30-page business plan, and I'll mark it. So I thought, fantastic, I'm going to open a wine bar, and I'm going to call it Ziggy's. That was the 80s, after all. And so Ziggy's came to life day after day when I was sitting in the library. And surrounded by these books and this quiet solitude, I would imagine what Ziggy's would look like, what the interior was, what music we would play, and what wine we would serve. And then I had to do the really hard stuff. I had to crunch all the numbers, profit and loss statements, cash flow forecasts, and a whole host of other business plan things. If I'm honest, that entire experience took all my passion out of Ziggy's wine bar, and I lost my enthusiasm for ever being my own boss. So I handed my paper in, and I got a pretty average B-. Now, that was an archaic way to teach entrepreneurship. There was no problem solving. I don't think the world really needed another wine bar. There was no risk taking, and not one customer was consulted to see whether or not they'd come to Ziggy's. But more importantly, and most fundamentally, there was no mindset shift. Learning entrepreneurial theory does not make you an entrepreneur. We are now living in a rapidly changing world, and I believe that we need to think like Katja to thrive. We need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. You may not become an entrepreneur, but you absolutely have to think like one. The future of entrepreneurship is not what business we start, It's how we think. 4 years ago, I started at this university as Director for the Centre of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I was on a mission to increase the number of students who participated in our programs. And no, our programs are not like what I studied 30 years ago. They are experiential. They solve real-world problems. They get people to work in teams and also to speak to customers. So I decided to do some market research. So I spent 2 days on campus with my clipboard, and I wanted to discover, what did students think about innovation and entrepreneurship? The results were quite surprising. They didn't really care about it. Most of the students I spoke to told me that when I finish my degree, I'm going to get a job. I don't want to start a business, so why would I need to learn about innovation and entrepreneurship? 4 years ago, we had 800 students in our programs. 4 years moving on, we've grown, in fact, by 370%, and this year we'll have over 3,000 students in our programs. So what's happened? Rapid change is the new normal, and there is no escape. And students are realizing that they need to be able to solve problems creatively, think adaptively, and really be solutions focused if they are going to stand out in this world. There's this realization that a degree isn't enough anymore. They have to do something different to really stand out. In my 4 years, it's this realization that I face every day when I talk to students. And they're starting to get worried not only about their future, but also about their employability. We are living in a time of constant change. There's a rapid introduction of disruptive technology, accelerating digitization, and this is all happening within an environment of tectonic political shifts, of financial power bases being displaced, and of course, massive climate change. We are also living in the fourth industrial revolution. This is where seemingly disparate technologies are coming together. The Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, genetics, data, quantum computing, and a whole host more are all meshed together to create novel solutions at pace. We can either be scared by these forces, or we can embrace them and see where these opportunities take us. This time, this IR4 also means that we have to start working differently. And a good example of this is Seoul Machines, and they are a spin-out from the University of Auckland. They create digital humans using artificial intelligence. And if you think about how Seoul Machines is staffed, they do it in quite a different way. Of course, they have a lot of AI researchers and scientists, but they also have neuroscientists, psychologists, artists, copywriters, and business people. And all of these diverse skill sets come together and innovate how we interact with machines. In this changing world, we know that linear thinking and linear solutions no longer apply. We're starting to move away from this paradigm of the machine, of the organization as a machine. That top-down hierarchy with everyone working in silos and that really rigid way of working served us well in the first and the second and the third industrial revolutions, when we moved from the field to the factory and from making products to processing information. But as we move into the fourth industrial revolution, organizations are also changing. They're becoming more dynamic and more fluid, and they're being like an organism. And they expand and they shrink, bringing together diverse experts, freelancers, and partnering with other companies to solve the problem that is in front of them at that time. This new type of organization is not going to provide you with a job for life. It's not even going to provide you with a job for the next 10 years. When that problem is solved, the expert is no longer needed and their time is over. This constant expanding and shrinking and this dynamism in the workforce is creating a new workforce economy. We're moving into a gig economy. The gig economy is when we have discrete parcels of work and we work for a specific period of time to solve a problem. And we come together with people who are very different to us to work on these problems to create solutions at pace. What we know is that PwC is finding that over half of the US organisations are embracing this new way of work. And the growth of freelancers is actually outpacing the overall employment growth. So this way of working is here to stay. And entwined with this is the fact that freelancers love this way of working. They love the freedom, the flexibility, and control that this gives them. Careers are no longer linear. That step-to-step plod to the top of an organisation after 20 years is now extinct. Careers are much more multidimensional. They're multifaceted, they're full of variety, and they're combining domain expertise with technical skills. You could be an HR analytics manager, so using your understanding of numbers and data to understand how people enjoy their jobs. Or maybe you're a data analytics and you can do really great sales, so you become a customer service and sales manager. What I imagine is that most of you in this audience are digital natives. You grew up with technology. This phone is attached to your hand almost every second of every day. And for you, technology is normal. You expect new solutions, new ideas, upgrades, lots of new stuff to be dropped every few months, and you thrive in this pace of change. But how will you stand out when everyone else around you is in that same environment? You need to be like Katja. You're not to risk your freedom or break any laws, but you need to be entrepreneurial. You need to be adaptable. You need to be creative in solving problems, and you need to be collaborating. This new economy requires new work skills. The World Bank tells us that you need to have cognitive flexibility, emotional intelligence, socio-behavioural skills, and adaptability if you're going to thrive in this new world of work. Now, that list sounds very fancy, but when I distill it down, all of those elements make up an entrepreneurial mindset. And this is how you need to be to thrive in the gig economy. Here we have Susan, and Susan is demonstrating some cognitive flexibility. She's actually asking her team members what they think of her idea, and she's seeking feedback so she can make her idea better. This is vastly different to how it was for me, sitting in my own library and in my own wine bar bubble. I didn't seek anyone. I certainly was not flexible in my cognition. And here we have Matt, and Matt is a creative technologist in our makerspace. He's an expert in 3D printing, but he's not telling and instructing these students what to do to use the 3D printer. Instead, he's coaching them and empowering them so that they can use that 3D printer by themselves to bring their ideas to life. Emotional intelligence, empathy, coaching are all skills that you need in this new world of work. Feel Good Period is a group of student entrepreneurs, and they all come from very diverse backgrounds. Their mission was to reduce period poverty. They managed to coalesce and to harness the power of their diversity, manage conflict positively, and create a great solution to further their cause. And then we have Neil. Neil is the founder of Hexacycle. And he has discovered that black soldier flies larvae does a fantastic job of eating up organic waste and saving that organic waste from going into landfill. So his plan was to create lots of fly factories and work with local government across New Zealand and expand it. But through a chance meeting with an Uber driver in Auckland, he's now working in Kerala with the Indian government, putting his fly factories all around there and helping them with one of their biggest environmental problems. That truly is an adaptable way of being. You really do have to think like an entrepreneur to stand out, because the future of entrepreneurship is not what companies will be started, but it's how we think. You need to move from what you do to how you do it. The traditional undergraduate degree will not serve you well in the future. Career Build has found that half of the US graduates don't even work in their field of study. And LinkedIn data is showing that recent grads have 3 jobs in 5 years. There's not even one career for life anymore. You have a portfolio approach. With the gig economy, you must be your own business. You need to be like Katja. You need to have that entrepreneurial mindset. Because the future of entrepreneurship is not how we think of new ideas. It's not how we raise funds for the startup. It's not how we incubate and drive these ideas further. Instead, the future of entrepreneurship is here. It's in your mind. Your mind is your toolkit to unleash your potential and go and grab those horizons with gusto. Thank you.